The world is watching a high-stakes game of chess unfold. Two superpowers, the United States and China, are locked in a battle for global influence. This is not just a friendly competition, it is a fundamental clash of ideologies, economic might, and military ambition. The question on everyone's mind, can the US and China avoid a catastrophic collision? The rivalry between the US and China is multifaceted. Economically, they battle for markets and resources. Militarily, the South China Sea is a powder keg. China's aggressive territorial claims have alarmed its neighbours and the US. The issue of Taiwan further complicates the situation. Both countries are also locked in a fierce competition for technological supremacy. China's economic transformation over the past 4 decades has been breathtaking. Once struggling to feed its population, China is now a global economic powerhouse. Its Belt and Road Initiative seeks to connect China to markets across Asia, Africa and Europe. China's economic rise has fundamentally altered the global balance of power. The question remains, can this economic rivalry be managed peacefully? The US has watched China's economic ascent with awe and apprehension. Concerns over unfair trade practices and intellectual property theft have fueled tensions. The Trump administration's tariffs marked a significant escalation. The Biden administration has maintained a tough stance on China. Cooperation on global issues is necessary, but confrontation on trade and military expansion continues. China's Belt and Road Initiative aims to reshape global trade and geopolitics. Proponents argue it will bring infrastructure investment to developing countries. Critics view it as a tool for Chinese expansionism and debt-trap diplomacy. Concerns about transparency, environmental sustainability and labour practices persist. Some countries are re-evaluating their participation in the BRI. Taiwan, a small island off the coast of China, holds immense geopolitical significance. For China, Taiwan is a breakaway province that must be reintegrated. For the US, Taiwan is a key democratic ally. China's military assertiveness has heightened anxieties. The US has increased its military presence, raising the stakes in this standoff. The US walks a diplomatic tightrope with Taiwan. The Taiwan Relations Act commits the US to providing Taiwan with defense means. Recent calls in Washington suggest a shift towards a more explicit security guarantee. The Biden administration has strengthened ties with Taiwan. These actions risk further inflaming tensions with China. The South China Sea is a flashpoint in the US-China rivalry. China claims nearly the entire sea, disputed by several Southeast Asian nations. The US conducts freedom of navigation operations to challenge China's claims. These operations are met with furious condemnation from Beijing. The risk of miscalculation and accidental escalation is high. Technological prowess is the new currency of power, centered on semiconductors. The US once led in semiconductor manufacturing, but China is catching up. The Trump administration's sanctions on Huawei exposed China's vulnerability. The Biden administration continues to restrict exports of advanced chip-making equipment. Strengthening alliances with key semiconductor-producing nations is crucial. The US and China are competing to dominate artificial intelligence. AI has the potential to revolutionize industries and reshape warfare. China aims to become the world's leading AI power by 2030. The US is increasing funding for AI research and implementing export controls. The competition has a moral dimension, with concerns over China's use of AI for surveillance and control. While AI grabs the headlines, another technological frontier is emerging from the shadows, promising to reshape the geopolitical landscape in even more profound ways: quantum computing. This revolutionary technology, still in its infancy, harnesses the bizarre laws of quantum mechanics to perform calculations at speeds unimaginable for even the most powerful classical computers. Quantum computers have the potential to crack the encryption codes that protect sensitive data, revolutionize drug discovery, accelerate materials science, and upend entire industries. The country that unlocks the secrets of quantum computing first could hold the keys to unprecedented technological and geopolitical power. The US, with its long history of scientific innovation and a robust quantum research ecosystem, is considered a leader in quantum computing. However, China is rapidly closing the gap, investing heavily in quantum research, building world-class research facilities, and attracting top talent from around the world. The race for quantum supremacy is on, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Both the US and China recognize the transformative potential of quantum computing and the national security implications of falling behind in this technological race. The competition for quantum supremacy is not just about scientific prestige, it's about securing a decisive advantage in a future where quantum technologies could reshape the balance of power. The world watches with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension as these two technological titans race towards the quantum frontier, the outcome of which will have profound implications for the 21st century and beyond. As the rivalry between the United States and China intensifies, casting a long shadow across the global stage, nations around the world find themselves caught in a geopolitical tug-of-war. This is not the Cold War of the 20th century, with its neatly defined ideological blocs and predictable alliances. The emerging world order is far more fluid, complex and multipolar, marked by shifting allegiances, pragmatic partnerships, and a constant recalibration of national interests. The United States, while still boasting the world's most powerful military and a vast network of alliances, is no longer the unchallenged hegemon it once was. China's economic rise, coupled with its growing military might and assertive foreign policy, has emboldened those seeking an alternative to the US-led global order. This has led to a realignment of global power, as nations hedge their bets and seek to navigate the increasingly turbulent waters of international relations. On one side of this emerging divide stands the United States, seeking to rally its traditional allies in Europe and Asia to counter China's growing influence. The Biden administration, while emphasizing diplomacy and multilateralism, has made it clear that it views China as a strategic competitor and a threat to the rules-based international order. This has led to a renewed focus on strengthening alliances within NATO, bolstering partnerships in the Indo-Pacific region, and seeking to forge new coalitions of like-minded democracies. On the other side stands China, offering an alternative vision of global governance, one that emphasizes national sovereignty, non-interference in internal affairs, and a rejection of what it sees as US hegemony. China has sought to build its own network of partnerships, primarily through economic ties and development assistance, often targeting countries wary of US influence or seeking to balance their relationships with both superpowers. Amid this global realignment, one relationship stands out for its potential to reshape the geopolitical landscape: the burgeoning partnership between China and Russia. Once bitter rivals during the Cold War, these two Eurasian giants have found common cause in their shared distrust of the United States and their desire for a multipolar world order. This strategic convergence has led to deepening economic, military and diplomatic ties, raising concerns in Washington and other Western capitals. Russia, under the leadership of Vladimir Putin, has increasingly turned eastward as its relationship with the West has deteriorated over issues such as Ukraine, Syria, and allegations of election interference. Facing Western sanctions and seeking to diversify its economy away from dependence on Europe, Russia has found a willing partner in China. China, for its part, sees Russia as a valuable counterweight to the United States and its allies. Russia's vast energy resources, military technology, and permanent seat on the UN Security Council make it a strategic asset for Beijing. The two countries have conducted joint military exercises, expanded energy cooperation, and coordinated their diplomatic positions on issues ranging from North Korea to arms control. However, this Sino-Russian partnership is not without its complexities and potential pitfalls. Despite their shared interests, the two countries harbour historical suspicions and compete for influence in Central Asia and the Arctic. China's growing economic might dwarfs that of Russia, raising concerns in Moscow about becoming overly dependent on its powerful neighbour. As the United States and China vie for global influence, many nations are choosing not to pick sides, opting instead for a strategy of strategic autonomy or non-alignment. These countries, often located in the global south, seek to maintain good relations with both superpowers while safeguarding their own national interests. They view the emerging bipolar world order with a mixture of pragmatism and apprehension, seeking to maximize their leverage and avoid becoming pawns in a great power game. India, with its burgeoning economy, large population and strategic location in the Indo-Pacific, exemplifies this approach. New Delhi has deepened its defence ties with the United States and participates in the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, or Quad, a strategic forum that also includes Japan and Australia. However, India remains wary of antagonising China, its largest trading partner, and has refrained from joining any formal alliances aimed at containing Beijing. The European Union, grappling with its own internal divisions and seeking to assert its strategic autonomy, is also navigating a delicate balancing act. The EU has a strong economic relationship with China, but it is also wary of Beijing's growing assertiveness and human rights record. While the EU seeks to cooperate with the United States on issues such as climate change and trade, it is also wary of being drawn into a new Cold War. Many countries in Southeast Asia, Africa and Latin America face similar dilemmas. They welcome Chinese investment and development assistance, but they are also wary of becoming overly dependent on Beijing. These countries seek to maintain their independence and leverage their relationships with both superpowers to advance their own national interests. Predicting the future, as the old adage goes, is a fool's errand, especially in the realm of international relations. The trajectory of the US-China relationship, with its complex interplay of economic interdependence, geopolitical rivalry and ideological differences, is far too intricate to lend itself to simplistic forecasts. While the drums of a new Cold War beat loudly in the headlines, fueled by genuine concerns and often amplified by political posturing, it is essential to remember that history rarely repeats itself in a predictable fashion. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, a defining conflict of the 20th century, was a clash of ideologies, a battle between capitalism and communism for the hearts and minds of the world. The rivalry between the US and China today, while undoubtedly fraught with tension and the potential for conflict, unfolds in a vastly different context. The world is no longer divided into two rigid ideological camps, and economic interdependence, rather than stark separation, characterizes the US-China relationship. Moreover, both the United States and China possess nuclear weapons, a sobering reality that imposes a level of restraint and caution absent during the Cold War. The potential consequences of a direct military conflict between these two superpowers are too catastrophic to contemplate, making diplomacy, however fraught with challenges, the only rational course of action. While the spectre of a full-blown Cold War, with its proxy wars and constant threat of nuclear annihilation, remains a distant possibility, the US-China relationship faces a period of prolonged strategic competition. This competition will likely play out across multiple domains, from economic and technological spheres to diplomatic and military arenas. The rivalry between the United States and China, the established power and the rising power, evokes the ancient Greek historian Thucydides' famous observation about the Peloponnesian War. It was the rise of Athens and the fear that this instilled in Sparta that made war inevitable. This concept, often referred to as the Thucydides trap, suggests that a rising power's growing ambition and the incumbent power's fear of displacement can create a dynamic that makes conflict almost unavoidable. While the Thucydides trap offers a sobering historical analogy, it is essential to remember that it is not a preordained outcome. The US and China, despite their differences and the inherent challenges of managing such a consequential relationship, have the capacity to avoid falling into this historical trap. Doing so will require a combination of strategic foresight, diplomatic skill, and a willingness to embrace compromise and cooperation where possible. One key to avoiding the Thucydides trap lies in recognizing and respecting each other's core interests. For China, this includes its territorial integrity, economic development, and its desire for greater global influence commensurate with its growing power. For the United States, core interests include maintaining its global leadership, upholding the rules-based international order, and protecting its allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific region. Managing these competing interests will require both sides to abandon zero-sum thinking and embrace a more nuanced understanding of shared interests and common ground. While competition between the US and China is inevitable, and in some ways even healthy, it need not devolve into a self-fulfilling prophecy of conflict. In the face of escalating tensions and the risk of miscalculation, open and honest dialogue between the United States and China becomes not just desirable but essential. Diplomacy, however challenging and at times frustrating, remains the only viable path for managing this complex relationship and preventing it from spiraling into open conflict. Dialogue, to be effective, must go beyond the exchange of pleasantries and the recitation of well-rehearsed talking points. It requires a willingness to engage in frank and substantive discussions on the issues that divide the two countries, from trade disputes and intellectual property rights to human rights concerns and military activities in the South China Sea. Moreover, dialogue must extend beyond government officials and encompass a broader range of stakeholders, including business leaders, academics, journalists, and civil society representatives. Fostering greater understanding and building trust between the peoples of the United States and China will be crucial for mitigating the risk of conflict and creating a more stable and cooperative relationship. The US and China share a number of common challenges that demand global cooperation, such as climate change, pandemics, terrorism, and nuclear proliferation. Addressing these transnational threats effectively will require the US and China to find ways to work together, setting aside their differences and leveraging their respective strengths for the greater good. The US-China relationship stands as the defining geopolitical challenge of the 21st century. The choices these two superpowers make in the coming years will determine whether the world descends into a new era of great power rivalry and conflict, or finds a path towards a more stable, prosperous and cooperative future. The stakes could not be higher. A world divided between two competing blocs, each with its own economic system, technological standards, and security alliances, would be a less prosperous, less secure, and less free world. Such a world would exacerbate existing tensions, hinder global cooperation, and increase the risk of conflict, particularly in regions caught in the middle of this great power rivalry. Conversely, a world in which the US and China find ways to manage their differences, cooperate on shared challenges, and build a more constructive relationship would offer greater hope for humanity. Such a world would be better positioned to address global challenges, foster economic growth, and uphold the values of peace, freedom, and human dignity. The path forward will not be easy. It will require both the United States and China to demonstrate leadership, vision, and a commitment to diplomacy and dialogue. It will require a willingness to compromise, to find common ground, and to build a relationship based on mutual respect and understanding. The future, while uncertain, remains unwritten. The US and China, through their actions and choices, will determine whether this new chapter in human history is one of conflict or cooperation.